You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway, a podcast that is dedicated to one thing, and that is to give you the tools and strategies needed to live a better life. We come to you on a regular basis, giving you the expertise of our quality and qualified guests who share their experiences, share their stories, and share their strategies, their tools, their ideas, their concepts on how we can live a better life, a life of freedom, a life of liberty. What is liberty? What does it mean to live a life of freedom? It means to be able to act, think, function, react, to move, to live a life that is free of restraints. Harriet Tubman said, I could have freed a lot more slaves if only they knew they were slaves. How many of us are living a life in which we don't even realize that some of the things that we're living, some of the things that we're dealing with is a chain that is holding us back? My friends, we're excited about offering you everything that is necessary for you to break those chains and to live a better life. Not just you. I don't want to be free and leave my family behind. I want everyone connected to me to live a free life and a life of liberty. Well, I'm excited about our guest for the Underground Subway. Her name is Melanie Gall. Let me tell you a little bit about Melanie. As a homeschooling mom of 5, she went from a depressed coffee addict to being passionate about her life's stories. We all are a product of our past, but the stories we tell always don't have to keep us stuck. As a life and soul coach, she helps people gain a clear understanding to what they need in life to discuss tools to help them get it. She's done 6 years post-secondary education in the training realm and love good, deep conversations about things that matter. Want to welcome to the Underground Subway our guest, Melanie Gall. Melanie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule as a mom of 5. I know it's a busy schedule, and thank you for joining us on the Underground Subway.
Oh, thank you so much, David. Such a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Well, let's jump right into it, Melanie. In your bio, it talks about the fact that we all are a product. One of your favorite quotes, your quote is, we all are a product of our past, but the stories we tell ourselves don't have to keep us stuck. Talk to us about that from the start. Tell us something about your story, or what do you exactly mean when you say the product of our stories, the product of our past, but the stories, we are a product of the past. We understand that, but talk to us about what you mean by the stories we tell ourselves, and possibly tell us a little bit about your story.
That sounds good. You know, I am going to delve into something that might be a little bit mature.
That's
So
fine.
if there are little ears listening, maybe this could be a trigger warning just to cover them up or have them removed for a few moments.
Okay.
You know what? When I was 8 years old, there was a male babysitter in the house who chose to take advantage of me. And at that moment, as I walked up the stairs, instead of finding a mom who was able to have tools and know how to walk that through with me, it was dismissed. And in that moment, I was offered a lie to believe that I was alone and that I had to figure everything out on my own. And that millisecond changed my life forever, because every reaction, every action, every decision that I made going forward, I went forward with the filter of, I am alone. I have to protect myself. Nobody else knows how to do this. The tools are elusive. I need to do it myself. And fast forward 30 years, and I found myself married to my wonderful husband, who was a police officer here in Canada, actually. We had 5 kids. We had all of them within 5 years. So when we brought the twins home, the oldest was 5, and it was chaotic for sure. And we were very happy, had just such a beautiful rhythm of life. Um, 18 months later, I found my son uh, gray and unmoving in the crib, my youngest son.
Oh no.
And in that moment, everything from my past came rushing back to me
Hmm.
because we lived in a tiny town where no one knew why he was like that. It turns out he ended up having three different types of seizures. No one knew what they were doing. No one knew how to help me. We were in such a small town. It was my responsibility to research. It was my responsibility to take care of the kids because my husband worked so much. It was my responsibility to make sure that all of the household chores were done and jobs were done. And I started living full force out of that framework again. But when you have a police officer husband, and when you have all these little babies that you're taking care of, and when you live in a small town where there's not much community and not much help, and you don't know many people, the isolation and the loneliness sure set in. And this was not the white picket fence life that I had imagined or dreamed. It rarely is, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Very, right? But it's in this moment when all of the coping mechanisms that I had built up over the last 30 years started to falter and started to break apart. I couldn't do it all. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to help myself, let alone raise these babies. I mean, my husband was around as much as he could, but living in a small town, he was always called out and always working. So I started to crumble. And um, unfortunately, I still hadn't gained the knowledge of how to put myself back together
Hmm.
because my coping mechanisms had worked very well for all of these years. The main premise and the main lie that I had believed when I was 8 years old was that I was alone. And what
Hmm.
happens in our brains and in our bodies when we have panic attacks is that we actually believe that we are alone in the world, or there is no one to help us, no one to love us, no one to walk beside us or to catch us when we fall. And it tends to happen, and for me, maybe, I'm not sure about your listeners, but for me, at nighttime, because that's when all of the distractions and the busyness of life um, kind of dispersed a little bit, and I was left with just my fears. I didn't know when I would find my son unmoving again. I didn't know when he would have a seizure or hit his head. I didn't know when his twin sister, who was also 18 months old, would be a normal toddler, or the other little kids hurt themselves. And it was just this constant state of stress and chaos. So um, I want to tell everyone that you are not alone. Please don't
Hmm.
believe that lie. There is so much goodness in the world, and so many people who love you and who want to love you. So I'm sure we'll get more to that later.
Well, let me ask you that, being you said that about not being alone and so many people. You mentioned that you lived in a community where it was not a lot of people, etc., just you, or a little small community, and you didn't know anyone. One of the things that we probably need when times are really difficult is to have good friends. And
Yeah.
you didn't, apparently, when you feel alone, you also feel like you don't have friends. I went through something the other day where I just was feeling as if I needed to talk to someone, and I called about four of my friends, and none of them answered the phone. And
Mm.
that's when you feel alone. How do you think, what should we do, in your opinion? How do we make friends? How do we really make a friend?
Oh, such a great question. I've been reading a book called Find Your People by Jenny Allen. It has a really brightly colored yellow book cover if you look on Amazon for it. And she has written a whole book on this, but it puts together a lot of the pieces of what I had to do myself. Um, I remember when I was having all my panic attacks and was feeling very alone, I tried many different things. And one of the things that I did was a vision board. And I don't know if you've ever done that or ever heard of that, but I
Mm-hmm.
went through and I cut out, there's a few different ways you can do it, right? You cut out all these different words and pictures of kind of how you want your life to be. And sometimes it feels foolish because we prejudge it and think, oh, life is never going to turn out like that. But I took a chance and I had courage and I started to do this, and I started to recognize a theme of joy and happy colors and peace. I wanted peace in my life so badly.
Mm-hmm.
And good old social media is great for connection, but it can cause you to feel even more lonely because you see all these other pictures of people with their friends. But hashtags are really great, and to get into communities online of similar interests. But not only that, but to have the courage then to say, hey, can we please meet up? Can we go to a park with your kids? Like as a young mom with kids, that's easy enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
All right.
but and so actually getting out of the house, and I am the first to say that when you are in a depressed state or you are in a state of fearfulness, um, my social anxiety was off the chart. So I would make plans to go to my friend's house, but at the doorway, I would turn around because I just couldn't handle the stress of what could happen inside. Um, and in watching the movie, oh, is it Upside Down? Oh, I forget what the name of it is, but it's these characters that are all feelings, and this one feeling was so scared and so sad, and he was down in a hole, and all these other characters went down and tried to make him better. They couldn't make him better. They couldn't make him better. But then this other character came down the ladder and just simply sat with him, didn't say a word, but just was shoulder to shoulder and understood the power of simply being together. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, that was beautiful. And, it takes some time and it takes some courage, but we think we need all these friends, but really we need just one. We just need one person who's willing to sit with us and not have to say anything.
Mm-hmm. When I was a little boy, I had a difficult time spelling the word friend. I would always spell it Friend. And my teacher told me, she said it's spelled Friend. And she said, always remember the last three letters of the word friend is END, because a friend will stick with you to the end. And so as we talk about a friend, I remember a television show where it was a comedy, and the guy asked him, he said, who is your best friend? And he named some guys, and the guy said, no, my best friend is Jesus. So I was laughing at that as you were talking, because I wanted to ask you how much of a role, if we're talking about friends, how much of a role did your faith play a role in you in changing your life throughout the years?
Absolutely. Great question. My faith definitely played a role. I never questioned that Jesus wasn't with me,
Mm-hmm.
but I also knew that something was actually wrong with me. And so, or felt like something was wrong with me. And so trying to, right, because when we're depressed, there could be a chemical imbalance, or there could just be something happening inside of our body. Like if you have too much candida, right? I'm in the realm of gut health as well. If you have too much candida, that plays a role on your hormones. Who knew that having 5 babies in 5 years would sink my gut health and then cause all these hormones to go crazy, right? So there is that element of it. And for me, it was feeling like there was someone who actually had the answer, and I just needed to ask him. So he's not a magical genie, but there was this peace and this deep sense of, I will find out the answer to this, because he has promised never to leave me and never to forsake me. And so one time, I have a girlfriend who is a professional hammer thrower, and she says, Mel, we're going to go to hot yoga today. And I was like, oh my word. I had, still had my pregnancy body and wasn't really feeling like I would go and just do these positions for 15 minutes at a time, sweating my buns off with all these other people. And so I thought, okay, here's a friend. She's asking me to do something. And I think that would be another thing, is just to say yes to any opportunity that comes. So I went to hot yoga and I was laying there and I looked around, and there was this grandpa, Caucasian grandpa, who was in his 70s doing yoga. And there was this tiny South Asian 15-year-old to my left who was doing it, who could do all the positions perfectly. And, then there's me and there's my Olympian friend. And I thought, what in the world, Lord, why are all these people here? And I'll never forget, he said, Mel, everyone is lonely. And
Wow.
that was so profound and has carried me through so much, because often we feel like no one else feels the same as me.
Mm-hmm.
And we sink into this victim mentality that we are truly not just alone or lonely, but the only one. And when I was learning about self compassion, that is the beginning step, is to recognize A, I'm feeling like this, but then B, to go to the next step, I am not alone. There are other people. The Bible talks about that, right? That there, like, even Jesus himself has felt what we felt. And so to recognize that, and then to give myself permission to say what it is that I need. And that formula has helped me so, so much.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, if I can, Melanie. You're talking about friends and the relationship, your faith and everything, and that you're not alone. Do you think that having twins was significant in your life?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? It definitely catapulted me, because as a police officer's wife, I was already in a bit of a niche. And then to add like a very strong born again Christian kind of furthered that a little bit. And then to add twins to the mix, um, it very much had an impact on me. There are not many people that can resonate with all three of those spaces in
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm. How difficult is it for you to talk about? You talked about your story when you started, about what happened to you at 8 years old. How difficult is it for you to talk about that now?
I've had to do a lot of healing.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't when we don't understand our story, we don't understand why we react to certain things the way that we do. And it's only through finding a safe person. David, may I offer another suggestion of what it is that I did to help kind of
Sure.
gain community? Yeah. Um, it's the absolute antithesis of how we feel in those moments, but
Mm-hmm.
serving other people. When I can serve a homeless at a homeless shelter, or when I can serve at my church for a Christmas banquet, or when I can serve an elderly person who can't get out of their house, I start to recognize a joy that
Mm-hmm.
I cannot conjure up on my own. And so looking for places to serve, um, where maybe some other people might actually feel the same as you,
Mm-hmm.
was really helpful for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we've touched all of that. Now I want to go back to what you originally said, and hopefully, um, you mentioned getting the younger ones out of the room, and so they're probably already out of the room. So we'll just open up this can of worms or whatever. Talk to us, Melanie. I'm really enjoying this conversation. There's an old saying that time flies when you're having fun, and I want to get this point out. Talk to us about what you went through in life was as a child was difficult. How let's tie that into this word that I found out that most Christians don't want to talk about. And although it happened to you, it happened to me, and it's happened to so many others. Talk to us
Mm-hmm.
your views on this word that has for years been considered a taboo, and that's the word sex.
Mm-hmm. Uh, it's a passion of mine. Um, I'm just about to do a series on my podcast, actually, all about sexuality and your story. Because when you start to understand what you actually believe about your body, what lies you've believed from the media, what the atmosphere surrounding sex was in your home, it opened up a ton of curiosity for me, also great understanding. I think sex ought to be talked about right from the minute your child is born. know, a lot of people raise their eyebrows because how can your child actually understand you when you're talking about that? But it's not that you're getting into the nitty of it. It's in your facial expressions when they're naked. It's in your tone when you go to change their poopy bum. It's in the way that you properly and however it is with you and your husband or, you know, if within your home, walk around. Do you walk around naked? Do you walk around with clothes on? How old does your child need to be when they stop seeing you without clothes on? Like, life is about answering questions. And if you are courageous enough to start asking questions, you will start to uncover so many things about what you believe and where you want to go. So,
Mhm.
what questions more specifically do you have for me in regards to that, Evan?
Well, I was just wondering, one question in particular is why, because you just mentioned this, why do you think it's such a fear of ours to discuss it?
Oh, yeah, 100% evil. Evil wants to mar anything, anything that is good. And he has had a heyday with sex and sexual stories because of how easily it can get twisted and how much shame, right? Shame right from the beginning, right in
Mhm.
Genesis. And God says, like, Adam, Eve, where are you? And they say, we're in the garden. We were afraid. And he says, well, who, like, we were afraid because we were naked. And God says, who told you you were naked?
Mhm.
Right there, the presence of evil and the way that he can distort what it is that God made good is so easy. And we cling to that. And when we were born, we were naked. And when we were made, we were naked. And God called that good.
Mhm.
So if you want to start to recognize your sexual story, when did you start to feel shame in regards to your body?
Mhm.
Who told you is such a great question. And why? And here's another reason why sex isn't talked about in the church very much is because we don't have the tools to walk people through that because we haven't actually walked through it ourselves.
Mhm. Wow. I heard someone say, you can elaborate on this if you choose to. I heard someone say one time that there are two things that we don't want to talk about in church, and those two things are sex and money. And we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, but we love both, and we never get enough of both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, but I do think that both of those things will be the downturn of our entire civilization
Yes,
when it comes to end times. Yeah.
yes. One of my speakers, I don't want to get off target, but one of my guests mentioned that the most evil animal in the zoo is not the devil, but it's the love of money. And that's, the
Mm-hmm.
society we live in. Well, Melanie, at what age, or talk to us from a parental standpoint, at what age do you start to talk to your children about sex, and how does that go? Are there any
Oh,
tools or
yeah, this could be a whole podcast on its own.
I'm
You know,
sure.
there are many tools, and what I'll do is we can probably write them and have them in the notes maybe of this episode
Sure.
for your listeners, yeah, to download or to buy. But um I would say right from age 3, you know,
Okay.
and it's just using appropriate language, right?
Mhm.
Even something as simple as you get out of the shower and your child looks at your chest as a woman and says, "What are those?"
Mhm.
Right? Or touches them, or you're nursing in public, and right, and it's we instantly want to run and hide or push their hand away or cover up or lie and say those are my
Mhm.
tatas, right? Or right, and it's like, okay,
Mhm.
is is it
Right.
okay that my child learns about the elbow as well as my breast, or the
Mhm.
child learns about my husband's penis as well as his kneecap, and what is the function of that, right? Like, to be very honest and very open, because here are two reasons why. If your child is on the playground and they know nothing about sex, they know nothing about their private parts, and they hear it from another 8-year-old,
Mhm.
all of a sudden that 8-year-old now is the authority on sex for them.
Exactly. I agree
We
100%.
we do not want another 8-year-old who probably has a very wrong understanding of sex and has seen many things that are not okay for their age and has zero understanding of the purpose and the beauty and the potential for what great sex could be. So we want to talk to our kids about sex right from the very beginning because we want to be the authority. Not only that, but it also opens the doorway for very great open communication with our children as they
Mm-hmm.
grow, because no topic is off limits.
Right.
Then just the second one here quickly, David, is that if they were to be, God forbid, in an abuse situation, they have the vocabulary with which to speak about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just that that's a threat to abusers when they can tell that the children know
Mm-hmm.
that is the proper word for it, because then they can also talk about that later, should they have the proper support and care surrounding them.
What are your opinions on the school educating our children on sexuality?
The school, especially public schools nowadays, are a bit of a hot topic for me because I'm just going to leave it at this. They do not have our children's best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree. So is that why in your bio, you talked about homeschooling? Is that one of the reasons why you're a homeschooling mom, because of the fact that they are not equipped? You're in Canada, so you're okay. You can.
For many reasons, we chose to homeschool. So one of the consequences of my child having so many seizures is that he is slow to speak at this point. So when in the height of COVID, they were to go to school, he needed to be masked. But he also has a rare genetic disorder, which aids in his inability to speak clearly at this moment. And so he is at a developmental level of about a 2.5-year-old, where he still needs to be able to see people's mouths, and people need to be able to see his mouth to see what it is that what word he's trying to form and how his mouth is moving. And so to be in a mask, children who can speak perfectly fine, they've already seen such a decline in proper speech with those kids, but especially for my son. So that was the number one thing to start to homeschool them. But then when we dug into kind of the different curriculum and the different things that were being pushed in the school systems, um, even now my kids say, Mom, in an hour and a half, we learn more at home than we do in 6 hours at school. So not just the curriculum change, but also they're now learning things that they're passionate about and that they want, and that was another thing. This ties in perfectly even with anxiety and depression and feeling alone, is find out what your gifts are. What are you naturally good at? Don't worry about what you've been told your whole life, and don't judge yourself. If you love paper hats and you want to make those for the rest of your life, God has a purpose for you in making paper hats, and you go, girlfriend.
Mhm.
If you want to play volleyball and you love the people that are in the volleyball leagues and you have a way of talking to them because somehow you understand their minds, that's your gifting, and you go for it. You're going to find fulfillment and purpose. And so because that's such a huge passion of mine, to be able to instill that in my kids from a young age, they don't get that type of one-on-one, and they don't get the type of training that we are able to do at home in the
Mhm.
public school system. So yeah.
What do you think, in the time that we're running out of time, but we're certainly not running out of a great conversation. I'm really enjoying this. But what is the one thing, that you would say, if you could say the most important thing to your listeners and our listeners right now, what is that one thing that you can sum up or say to every one of you? If I gave you this magical microphone that you can speak to the entire universe at one time, what would Melanie Gall say to the world? I don't know whether you're old enough to remember, but years ago, there used to be a commercial and everyone was in the dining room eating dinner, and someone would say, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton. And when the person said that, everyone froze. And they said, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everyone listens. If Melanie Gall had the microphone and the whole world stopped and turned to you and started listening, what is it that you would say to the entire world?
That you have a purpose, that this world needs you, that there is a plan and a divine blueprint for your
Mhm.
life. and that you are never alone. Jesus is always with you, and that people around you need your voice, need your gifts, need your passion, need your purpose in order to catapult them into theirs. We are all interconnected, and you are important.
Wow, that's powerful and wonderful. And I don't know about our listeners, but I definitely need to hear that myself. We all have a purpose and a part of God's plan for us. Well, Melanie, tell us how we can get in touch with you, how we can get a hold of any material that you have, how we can link up to you, and very importantly, tell us how we can listen to your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for that opportunity. At www.melaniegall.coaching, MELANIEGALL coaching. And on there are links to like a free 30-minute session if you think that maybe we can chat. You know what? Coaching is so different because I just get a chance to sit with you. I am that person who crawls down the ladder and just sits with you and just simply asks questions. And I want to be your thinking partner. So if you think that that's something you need, please go on there. There's also going to be a link to like my gut health. If you're dealing with some things that you think, you know what, my health needs to have a little bit of help here, click on that. And then also to my podcast. It's called Sustained in the Middle, because when I look back, I know that there's a Jesus who was holding me and guiding me, even though I couldn't feel it sometimes.
Wow, that is proud. Your story is so inspirational, from the traumatic experience that you experienced as a child, and to the middle, as you refer to, and the fact that
Mhm.
we're so grateful that the beginning was rough, the middle was sustainable, but I'm so grateful that we are nowhere near the end yet, that you have so
Amen.
much more to do and so many more lives to inspire and to motivate and to coach toward their destiny. And Melanie, I want to thank you for, again, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be our guest on the Underground Subway.
Your questions were really great. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you so much. To our listeners, I hear the music playing, which means that we are about to pull into the subway station. The Underground Subway is coming to a close for this particular edition. I want to give another special thank you to our guest, Melanie Gall, who inspired us, but yet she almost made us leave as though we're feeling like there was more. We wanted more. And that's what a good
Mhm.
conversation consists of, when you say, I want more. So maybe we can get Melanie back in the future to talk to us again and go a little deeper into some strategies to make us better. Well, my friends, we're out of time, but certainly we're not out of inspiration for you. Continue to push, to drive, continue to search, to pull, to continue to do everything you need to do to reach your purpose and your destiny. Life is not over. No matter what you've gone through, no matter how difficult life has been, there's always a brighter future ahead. You are here on purpose with a purpose. You woke up this morning. That in itself means that there's more for you to do. Well, we've got to go. We're out of time, but certainly before we go, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you before you go to bed tonight. I want you to do something special. I want you to find a mirror. I want you to look into that mirror, and I want you to stare at yourself face to face, no one but you in the mirror. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Today, did I do something to work toward my purpose? Did I do something to work toward my destiny? Or did I waste another day? We don't have any more time to waste. We'll see you next time right here on the Underground Subway.